The massive battle tank sat motionless under the bright afternoon sun like a wounded giant abandoned on a battlefield. Engineers circled around it with laptops, expensive diagnostic tools, and stacks of technical manuals. 4 days had passed. $40,000 had already been spent. Yet the machine remained dead. Then an old Marine wearing faded work boots walked up, stared at the tank for less than a minute, climbed onto its steel body, and fixed the problem in 3 minutes. What happened next left everyone speechless. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the wisdom that comes with experience, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire for more powerful stories that remind us what truly matters in life. The Military Vehicle Restoration Center outside Amarillo, Texas, was known for handling impossible projects. Rows of armored vehicles lined the property, each carrying pieces of history. Some had served in deserts. Others had rolled through mountains and forests. Every vehicle told a story. But none had caused as much frustration as Tank 317. The tank had recently been purchased from a military surplus auction. A private museum planned to display it during a national veterans event only 2 weeks away. The machine was supposed to be fully operational for demonstrations. Instead, it had become a nightmare. Every morning, teams of specialists arrived before sunrise. They checked electrical systems, fuel lines, hydraulics, sensors, wiring harnesses, and computer modules. One expert blamed aging electronics. Another suspected corrosion deep inside the engine compartment. A third recommended replacing several expensive systems altogether. Parts were ordered. Tests were performed. Reports were written. Meetings filled entire afternoons. Yet the tank refused to start. The project manager, 43-year-old Colton Briggs, felt pressure building with every passing hour. He had built a reputation on solving difficult problems. Failure wasn't something he accepted easily. But Tank 317 seemed determined to humble everyone. As the 4th day arrived, workers moved around the facility with exhausted faces. The bright blue sky above contrasted sharply with the tension below. The museum representatives called constantly asking for updates. Sponsors wanted answers. No one had any. Around noon, while another team prepared to remove a major engine component, a dusty pickup truck rolled slowly through the facility gate. Most employees barely noticed. The truck looked older than many of the armored vehicles parked nearby. The driver stepped out carefully. His name was Roland Mercer. At 72 years old, Roland carried himself with quiet dignity. His gray hair was cut short. Deep lines marked his weathered face. His faded Marine Corps cap had clearly seen decades of use. Roland wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. Most people would have walked past him without a second glance. But hidden behind those tired eyes was a lifetime of experience. Roland had served as a marine mechanic during difficult years when technology wasn't always available to save the day. Back then, problems were solved through observation, patience, and understanding how machines truly worked. After leaving military service, he spent decades repairing equipment on farms, construction sites, and remote industrial operations. He rarely spoke about his accomplishments. The machines spoke for him. Roland had come to visit an old friend who worked at the facility. While waiting near the maintenance area, he overheard workers discussing Tank 317. Curiosity pulled him closer. He watched quietly from a distance as technicians argued over possible causes. One engineer pointed at a diagnostic screen. Another shook his head. A third recommended additional testing. Roland listened. Then he looked at the tank. For a long moment, he simply stood there. The bright afternoon sun reflected off the machine's steel armor. Workers moved around it in every direction. Something seemed off. Not broken. Not damaged. Just wrong. Years of experience had taught Roland that machines often reveal their problems if someone pays attention. The old Marine walked slowly toward the tank. A few workers glanced at him but returned to their tasks. Colton noticed him approaching. The project manager assumed he was another curious visitor. Roland asked if the tank had ever run since arriving. Colton explained the situation. 4 days. $40,000. No solution. Roland nodded quietly. Then he asked a few simple questions. Questions so basic that some engineers exchanged amused smiles. What happened immediately before the failure? Who transported the vehicle? Was anything adjusted during unloading? Had anyone checked the simplest possibilities first? The specialists had already moved far beyond simple possibilities. They were hunting complex answers. Roland walked around the tank once. Then twice. He studied its tracks. Its suspension. Its engine compartment. Its control systems. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply looking. Several younger technicians watched with skepticism. After all, how much could a retired mechanic understand about modern military equipment? The experts had already spent days investigating. Surely this old man couldn't discover something they had missed. But Roland wasn't trying to compete with anyone. He was listening to the machine. Finally, he stopped near the rear section. His eyes focused on a particular area. A small detail. Something most people would never notice. The old Marine climbed carefully onto the tank. A few workers followed out of curiosity. Others continued working. Roland reached toward a component hidden beneath a protective panel. He examined it closely. Then he smiled. Not a big smile. Just the kind of smile someone gives when they recognize an old friend. The problem wasn't expensive. The problem wasn't complicated. The problem wasn't even mechanical failure. During transportation, a critical safety linkage had shifted slightly out of position. Not enough to look obviously wrong. Not enough to trigger certain diagnostics. But enough to prevent the startup sequence from completing. The tank was effectively protecting itself from operating. Roland adjusted the linkage. Secured it properly. Double-checked its alignment. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. When he climbed down, several workers stared at him. Colton folded his arms. Part of him wanted to believe the issue had been solved. Another part expected disappointment. After 4 frustrating days, optimism felt dangerous. Roland simply told them to try starting it. The technicians exchanged uncertain looks. One climbed into the operator compartment. The engine controls were activated. Everyone waited. Silence filled the afternoon air. For a second, nothing happened. Then came a sound nobody expected. A deep mechanical rumble echoed across the facility. The tank shook. Another rumble followed. Then the massive engine roared to life. Birds scattered from nearby trees. Workers froze where they stood. Some stared in disbelief. Others looked at each other, convinced they had imagined it. But the impossible was happening. Tank 317 was alive. The machine that had defeated teams of specialists for 4 days was suddenly running perfectly. Colton couldn't speak. The engineers rushed toward monitoring equipment. Every system checked out. Temperatures were normal. Pressures were normal. Performance was normal. The tank rolled forward under its own power for the first time since arriving. Applause erupted across the facility. Workers who had spent days battling frustration suddenly found themselves cheering. Not because the project was saved. Because they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Roland wasn't celebrating. He simply watched the machine move. The same calm expression remained on his face. For him, the moment wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about helping solve a problem. As the excitement settled, Colton approached the old Marine. The project manager felt embarrassed. Thousands of dollars had been spent. Experts had analyzed every possibility. Yet the solution came from someone nobody had taken seriously. For the first time in years, Colton realized how easily experience can be overlooked in a world obsessed with technology. What happened next would change not only the future of the facility but also the lives of everyone who witnessed that afternoon. And none of them could have predicted the emotional lesson Roland Mercer was about to teach them. If this story is touching your heart so far, please like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes that wisdom and experience still matter in today's world. Special comment request: comment below, true wisdom never gets old. Because sometimes the most valuable knowledge doesn't come from expensive equipment, advanced software, or impressive titles. Sometimes it comes from an old Marine who spent a lifetime learning how to listen when everyone else was too busy talking. And for Roland Mercer, the greatest reward was never fixing the tank. It was proving that experience, humility, and patience still have a place in a world that often forgets their value.